Hi, I'm Mike Hulvey, President and CEO of the RAB, and welcome to Radio on Main Street, the podcast all about radio. We recently attended the annual NAB Show in Las Vegas. Over a 5-day period, this convention brought together over 55,000 attendees and over 1,100 exhibitors, along with featured keynotes and informative sessions focused on topics relevant to broadcasting, media, advertising, and entertainment. There were lots of discussion around both the challenges and opportunities facing radio, along with some key takeaways around the industry's One Voice for Radio initiative, truly making us better together. I had the opportunity to sit down with thought leaders from the industry, and together we talked about their plans for the future and how they're collaborating with RAB, advertisers, and fellow broadcasters to continue to transform our business. A big thank you to Inco and Benstown for allowing us to bring the Radio on Main Street podcast booth to the NAB Show, the NAB exhibit floor again this year. In the first episode of our series, you will hear a conversation that I had with my friend and industry partner, Curtis LeGeyt, the president and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters.
Hi, I'm Mike Hulvey, president and CEO of the RAB, and I am thrilled to have Curtis LeGeyt, my counterpart at the NAB, for this may be the first sit-down from CEO to CEO, and I love it.
Certainly the first one we're doing in public, so I think this is great.
That's true. That's true. First of all, we are here. It's early April. We're in Las Vegas. There is a buzz. There is excitement. Technology and our friends here at Inco have provided us with an amazing platform. Although to the viewers, it looks like we're on this amazing sound stage. Yeah. We're utilizing technology, and that's one of the underlying aspects of the NAB show. Curtis.
Yeah, well, we're thrilled to be here. The show floor just opened a few minutes ago. The energy's already palpable here. You know, we're going to have 1,100 exhibitors when it's all said and done this week, showcasing the latest technologies to over 60,000 attendees. So we're just absolutely thrilled that about the opportunities this show provides as a platform to bring all corners of the ecosystem of media together to confront all of the disruption, all of the questions we're all facing, and it's going to be a great week, and really appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you here and talk about it.
Well, you mentioned disruption, and physically, for those that have attended the show over the last couple of years, there is reinvestment that's happening in the physical space. So the show that the attendees have been enjoying here in Las Vegas, between West Hall and Central Hall and North Hall, and upgrades, and we're soon to be done with all of that. As someone who spends a lot of time thinking about this space and this show, what's your perspective on the upgrades that have occurred here?
Well, first and foremost, we're excited that this is going to be the last year where we're navigating around the construction. Next year, the full renovation here at the convention center will be complete, and we'll be able to utilize the full capabilities of the West Hall, which we're in today, as well as the North and Central Halls. And I think it's just a really enhanced experience for our audiences. I mean, we've all spent a lot of time coming to this trade show over the years. There are some areas that can feel a little dark, where it can feel pretty cumbersome to try to get from one hall or the other. And I think the convention center here has done an amazing job of modernizing the feel, opening it up, and really for us creating a space that matches where our industry is, which is forward-leaning and thinking about this nexus between technology and media, where those possibilities are. I think this footprint out here at the show and the feel and the buzz really enables what we're trying to accomplish. So we're excited. I think this year you're already seeing it. You know, some exhibitors are going to be in different spots than where our audiences may be used to seeing them because we're navigating around the construction. The Central Hall's closed right now. But once we are on the other side of this in 2026, I think it's going to be amazing.
All right, let's talk about Washington, a new administration, and nothing going on. Have you had fun?
There's obviously a lot happening in Washington right now, and for our industry, we're really trying to stay focused on our priorities. I think there is news every day that there can be a temptation to react to. just timing-wise for your audience, since I know that we're going to release this in a couple of weeks. We're sitting here in Las Vegas on the weekend following the administration's recent tariff announcements. So there's a lot to navigate. There's a lot to play defense on. But for our industry, we don't have time to be on defense. We have things that we need to be accomplishing to enable broadcasters to better compete in this very disrupted media environment that's increasingly dominated by the tech platforms. We need the FCC to act, we need Congress to act, and I think by continuing to focus on our priorities while also obviously responding where we need to and playing defense where we need to, especially as it relates to the independence of our local newsrooms across the country, we will do that, but we're going to accomplish some things together because we are unified as an industry. We are speaking with one voice, and I think the persistence of that, as well as our listeners' willingness to get engaged and fight with us for the future of radio, is something that allows us to cut through the noise in Washington.
It is very interesting because I don't remember as a broadcaster, and I've been in this business as a broadcaster for a very long time, a time where there was so much collaboration, both in your organization and in my organization. Yeah. You mentioned one voice. On the RAB side, with Nielsen's change and all of the companies understanding that we need to be talking about the same things and saying the same things and carrying a unified message to the ad community on our side. It's the same thing that is happening at the NAB with a lot of unification around some very important conversations. It is a unique moment in time.
We're both in the advocacy business.
100%.
It's two sides of the same coin, and I think the challenge that our industry faces, both in Washington, D.C., and with regard to our advertising partners, is at times a lack of understanding as to the enduring value and popularity of what we do. We can't flip the switch the way an Apple or a Spotify can and simply decide to amplify a singular message because one corporate decision maker decides that that's the message that's going to resonate in a given place and time. We literally have thousands of separately owned radio station groups in this country, and so when we make a determination as to how we are going to talk about our value proposition, well, at times we need to sell that to a lot of different decision makers, and that can cause confusion for policymakers. It can cause confusion for the ad community. It can cause confusion for the automakers. That's not a mistake that we're making right now. There is really a unity in cause. I think we are seeing the effectiveness of that in terms of the traction we're getting in Washington, D.C. on our major policy issues, and you're seeing that same success in terms of the advertising community and the automakers recognizing the hundreds of millions of people that still tune into radio every week. But that story is not going to be told for us. Right? We need to be the ones telling it. And uniquely as an industry, I think it falls on our associations to tell that story because we represent such a broad tent, which is exciting on one hand, but also creates a lot of urgency on the other.
No, there is no standing back on either side of this.
No.
And in a lot of ways, it's the same message. So ownership is a huge issue. AM radio is, again, looking at radio issues, is a huge issue. On your side.
Yeah.
I'm very proud that I have knocked on the doors on Capitol Hill before I joined RAB in this role and had some amazing conversations and advocating on why that matters. And we almost got there. And I say we, I mean radio.
Yeah.
We almost got there. Like the ball was at the goal line. We needed a tush-push, but we didn't get it. But it's not over yet. Very much in play.
The challenge in Washington right now is we are operating within a very narrowly divided Congress that, as a result of those divisions, is not for the most part passing issue-specific bills. So increasingly over the last several years, Congress relies on these large packages of legislation to move individual issue-specific bills where you try to tack onto them at the end of the year. And there's suddenly a resistance of those big legislative packages from the right. So it doesn't create a lot of opportunities to get things over the finish line. And that's what we walked into last Congress. That said, I think because we are picking up the ball and running from where we left off last Congress, we're giving ourselves a much better strategic opportunity to take advantage of some windows that are going to be in front of us to actually get this bill over the finish line. But let's talk about what this bill is actually driven by. Now, we have a great lobbying team in Washington, but this bill is not the sole result of their lobbying efforts. 2.5 years ago, Ed Markey reached out to the automakers at our behest, expressing his concerns about AM radio being removed from the automobile. And the automakers responded without creating a lot of certainty that they had the intention to keep AM radio in the car. As a result of that, we were able to amplify their response for listeners across the country. And local radio personalities from every corner of the country, from rural to urban, small market to large market, really took up the mantle of talking about the urgency to their listeners of the importance of maintaining AM radio in the automobile and the harm that would be posed to communities if suddenly that lifeline, especially in times of emergency, were to disappear. As a result, over the course of the last Congress, more than 800,000 listeners across the country reached out to their member of Congress and said, we need you to step up and do something about that. So what happened? Bills were introduced in both the Senate and the House. Strange bedfellows here. The bills being led by Senator Ted Cruz, a conservative from Texas, not a stranger to your audience,
No.
and a liberal Democrat from Massachusetts, Ed Markey. It's now been picked up in the House of Representatives by Gus Bilirakis, who is the chair of the House Energy and Commerce's Telecommunications Subcommittee, and Frank Pallone, who's the top Democrat on the full committee. So these are strange bedfellows. This type of a bipartisan coalition doesn't exist on many issues. And I think what it should signal to our listeners here is the enduring relevance of AM radio, that when the warning signs were there, that members on both sides of the aisle, regardless of politics, were willing to step up and help us. So where did we end up? Those bills, last Congress, the House bill attracted 270 bipartisan co-sponsors. The Senate bill, another 60 co-sponsors, moved through both relevant Senate and House committees and was on the goal line. We didn't get it done largely due to forces outside of our control.
Right.
But we're not letting up on this. The bills have been quickly reintroduced this Congress. The Senate bill has already moved through the Senate Commerce Committee. That's in spite of all of the other priorities that have really taken up bandwidth in Washington coming from the new administration. Republicans prioritized moving this in the Senate Commerce Committee. The House Energy and Commerce Committee, also Republican controlled, is poised to move this very quickly again. So we're out of the gates and we're running, and I'm just so proud of the coalition here. I'd like to get the bill done. Obviously, it is the top legislative priority for the National Association of Broadcasters, but we also have to acknowledge what the fight means for our medium. That anyone that questions the enduring relevance and importance of what we're doing every day in local communities, this activity that's really come from the grassroots. We've had very, very close partnerships with our state broadcast association affiliates. We're firing on all cylinders here, but it's because our listeners care.
So I will introduce the word tornado to you, and as we're getting near our allotted time, last Wednesday, as the Midwest suffered a lot of damage, some deaths, there were tornadoes in Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, where I live. We had a touchdown 2 miles from our home, and I think in all my years that was the closest touchdown that we've had. My children live in that area, and it just what was I doing? I was listening to the local radio station.
Yeah.
I was gaining access to information. I was sharing that with my family. But it's what we do. Like it's those moments that matter. Like really, really matter. And you just said it before, but we are at a time in both of our, and we are the industry.
Yeah.
And our work really matters, and we have to stay together.
Well,
we have to stay together.
The irony to what is happening in our media and advertising ecosystem is that increasingly these tech companies are coming into our space, in many ways undermining our advertising models, posing real challenges to our ability to just reach our listeners, and I deal with these same issues on our television side as well, our viewers, but they're not willing to do what we do.
No.
And it's in those times of emergency where at times cell phone towers might go down, the power may be out, where radio is really at its best. And so we're fighting not just to ensure the ability to access our technology, but also our ability to better compete with these tech platforms for advertising dollars and audience when they can maintain a scale that we can't. That's not just a scale in a local community, it's not just a scale nationally, it's a global scale. And broadcasters, radio broadcasters, are still operating under some rules that impedes our ability to maximize efficiencies and ensure that we can super serve in those times of emergency. I spoke to Bud Walters, who's probably no stranger to your audience, the longtime head of Cromwell Media. Bud has such a great perspective on the role of local broadcasters in their communities in these times of crisis. And his isn't driven by a bottom line. His is driven by the service, the ethos, our obligation operating on publicly licensed spectrum to be there in these times of emergency. But the reality is that in order to be there in these times of emergency, we need to have viable economic business models. And I think the changes we're fighting for right now in Washington will help ensure not just the ability of local stations to survive, but thrive on a going forward basis. This is one of the few issues that NAB advocates on, that when I'm at Easter dinner next week, that I can sit with my family and talk about, and they will shake their head, because it's just simply saying, the FCC acts like broadcasters only compete against other broadcasters for audience, for advertising dollar, increasingly for rights negotiations. Well, we want to keep sports on local radio and local television, and the streaming services are in this game, and we need to have the scale to compete with them. If my mom can get that on Easter dinner, I think the FCC needs to step up, unshackle us, and allow us to compete on a level playing field. And if we do that, we'll be able to better serve our communities during those tornadoes.
Look at what this conversation, we went from my grandmother to your mother.
It's pretty special.
We have connected.
That's the power of radio.
I appreciate your leadership, and I like where we are. No one is standing still, to your point. Everyone's on offense. We're working together. We are collaborating, and again, that's companies, that's organizations. We're in a good space. But if we settle to be here, we're going to have a problem.
We're going to have a real problem, and this is where I think new leadership is so important. You and I both succeeded, tremendously successful CEOs at our organizations, literally living legends who have shaped for the better the local radio industry in this country, and who really advocated day in and day out for the value of what we do to our respective constituency. For me, that's policymakers and regulators. For you, that's the advertising community. But there is something to be said for handing off the baton, bringing some new creative ideas, just being a new face to all of this advocacy. That, Mike, I'm really proud of the way that you're taking up this mantle. I think the industry is at the right time and the right place for your leadership, and we're going to get a lot of great things done together.
Well, likewise with you, and I thank you very much.
All right.
All right, you've got 1,000 places to go. I appreciate the 25 minutes you spent with us.
Happy to do it.
Curtis LeGeyt, our guest here on Radio on Main Street from the ENCO booth at the NAB.
As you heard directly from Curtis, there is important work happening on behalf of broadcasters at NAB, in Washington, D.C., and in partnership with broadcasters across the country to ensure that radio continues to shine and provide the communities we all live and do business in with unique attributes that radio delivers: live, local, trusted journalism, entertainment, companionship, and above all, a true community service.
If you'd like to learn more about radio and its many benefits, we invite you to visit us at rab.com, or you can email us directly at askrab@rab.com. Until next time, it's Radio on Main Street.